it will be called main navigation.tsx, and this is going to head our first component. So for this we want to define our main navigation and of course export it in order for other components to use it. And what this component will hold, first of all, it will have a JSX element that is going to be the header. And after we define our header, we want first of all to have something like a logo. So for this we want to put a div, and in the div we want to say that our logo is going to represent the actual name of the application, namely charts. After that we're gonna have a nav link with an unordered list, and every list element of this unordered list is going to be a navigation link, or more exactly a nav link, of course imported for React Router DOM. And as you know, the nav link must have a to element in it, so the to element will point to the exact path that you want to access, and for our first nav link it's going to be the bar chart. And after that we actually want to have something like, let's say, 4 nav links. So our second nav link, it's going not to be bar chart, of course, it's going to be line chart. The next element that we want to have, it's going to be our pie chart route. So pie chart, and the last one, it's going to be the Dogna chart. And one last thing before we end this part, in order to have an, let's say, better UI, we want to say between the nav links, the bar, the line, the pie, and the donut, in order to the user to just click on one of these elements and to have it exactly pointed to the actual route. Now it's time to style our main navigation a little bit. So for this I will go with like old style. I will create a module.css. We first of all will define our header with a width of 100%. Maybe the height should be something like 5 rem. The display should be flex. A little bit of padding, not too much, 0 and 10%. The justify content should be something like space between, and after that the alignment items should be center, and the background color I want something let's say greenish style, so let's define our green. After that our logo, that is going to be the actual name, the charts, let's say a font size of 2 rem. After that the color should be of course white because it looks pretty nice. After that our unordered list should be list style of none, and the display should be flex, and let's say the margin of 0, and the padding should be something like 0. And after that the nav list should have the margin left something like 1.5 rem, and the font should be maybe 1.25 rem. And that was all for our list. Let's move on to the nav A. Let's say our text decoration should be something like none, and the font should be or maybe not the font, let's say the color. The color should be also something like let's say this color, and our nav A hover. And if you want to hover also over our nav, not to hover, sorry, for nav active, let's say the color should be white. And after we define this CSS, we move back to our TSX and we will create the class name, but not before importing. You should import your CSS something like import classes from the CSS file, actually the CSS module that file. And the class name should be between curly brackets, and we will say something like classes.header. For the div, we want to say something like class name should be classes dot how do I define the logo. for the nav, it's going to be our next class, so class is dot navigation, and for our nav links it's going to be class name, and here we want to specify if our link is active or not. And for this we will say something like nav data with the property that it should be returned the CSS only if the nav link is active at this time. So for this we want to use the ternary operator, so if our nav data is active we want to put the active class, else no CSS should be added, and of course this should be added on every other nav link that we have. And that was all with the styling here. Okay, now in order to have something that wraps our main navigation, I want to create a wrapper over it that is going to be called layout.tsx. And for this we first of all define as const layout as a React component, and as we use TypeScript we want to define our props with an actual type. And our props will be simply the children of the components that he wraps over, and we want to return as a JSX element the fragment that is going to be imported from React and our main navigation. But we have an error here by exactly the props, but before that let's say we want to put our fragment, not our fragment, sorry, everything that it's underneath our main navigation into a main HTML tag that is going to contain our children. And now let's move on to the props. We want to define our interface that it's going to be called, of course, props, and it's going to have the children that are going to be the react.react node. This is going to actually have everything that it's going to be into the children's. That means every JSX element can be a children right now. And of course let's export default our layout. And let's style it a little bit. Let's create a layout.csx, actually layout module.csx, and let's say for the main that we want to have a margin of 3 rem and auto, and of course the width is going to be something like 90%. And the max width, let's say 40 rem. If we save it, we must give the style, and by that I mean the class name, that is going to be classes.main, but as you see I forgot to import the classes. And right now we must import classes from our layout module .csx. So import classes from layout module.csx. And with this we're gonna have a beautiful layout that wraps our main navigation. And right now let's move to the app component. So in the app component we want to put our layout, and if we put it and import it, what's wrong here? So of course we actually must put something between our layout to be the children's. And let's see how it looks. Well, I think it looks pretty nice. In this section of the video I want to present you how can we access all the data for all the other components. So I must have one data that is going to be accessed through all other components. And for this I will create a context folder, and in that I will define the option data context.tsx. After that we first of all must define our interface that is going to use the children. The children are going to be nothing more than JSX properties, and for that I will define interface aux props with the children that is going to have the type react.react node. After that you can go to the official website of Chartjs or React Chartjs 2 official website and get the actual types from there and also the values. But right now I will use the initial options that are going to be chart options of chart type registries and let's define them. The first element that is going to be defined is going to be the responsiveness of our chart. So for this, the responsiveness I want to be true. After that, I want to define the next property that is going to be maintain aspect ratio. Sorry for the mistype. Maintain aspect ratio. That is going to be another times true. After that, we must define our index axis. That is going to be our first axis, and this is going to be x. And don't forget, we must define x as const. Next one, let's move on to the scales. So we have two scales, x and y. First of all, our x-axis is going to have stacked false, and our y-axis is going to be stack false. So our initial option will actually create a vertical chart, a vertical bar chart to be more precise. After that, the plugins we must inject is, if we want to have a legend, we must say something like this: legend position where to put it, so top also as const, and our title, if we want to have one, to be displayed true. And let's give it a text. So the text is going to be chartjs.chart. This is going to be our title. After that, we want to define our next interface. So why are we defining this? Because we want to create an actual option reducer, and we want to type it afterwards. Actually before, not after. And for this, our option action interface is going to have a type that is going to be either vertical or horizontal or stacked. Or if we want to modify it one time, it's going to be custom. And I will define another parameter that is going to be modified options. I put it to be optional because it's going to happen only for the custom type. And of course must be of the same type as the initial options, so chart options key of chart type registry. And after we define our type, we can move on to the option reducer. So we define our option reducer to be the first parameter, the options, that of course is going to have the same type as our initial options, so chart options of key of chart type registry. And second of all, as far as you know, the reducer must have an action function that is going to be option action, the further interface that we defined. And what will our option reducer return? It's going to be chart options key of our chart type registry, because in the end we want to make actions and to build another option or to modify our existing one. And if we switch to the action type, let's move on to the first case that is going to be, as the option interface said, vertical. So what do we want to do? Well, since we have our initial options but we doesn't know if we actually modified it, we must first of all deep clone our option. And why do we do it? First of all, let's import it from Lodash. And what does this deep clone actually means? We shouldn't modify the options passed in the option reducer. We should never modify such things, nor in JavaScript or in React. And this deep clone creates actually another clone of our options, but is going to be another hash in the memory. So we do not modify the actual options. So this new options is going to be clone deep options as chart options of type bar chart. And we want to see if our scales are actually stacked or not, because from the vertical point of view, we don't want to make them stacked. And for this, we will make something that I encourage you to do if we are working with types, that is going to be check all the parameters, because if some of them are undefined, this could lead to some potential errors. So we will first of all check the scales.x, the scales.x.stack, the scales.y, and the scales.y.stack. And we will define the new options of our scales first of all the x1 to be false, and after that our y1, the other axis, to be also false. So we will create the this type of option exactly as our initial option. And what should we return? But before we return it, let's also check the index axis, because we, as I said, we could create something different. So for example, we could move from a vertical bar chart to a horizontal one. So if we have a vertical bar chart, we should also, if we have a horizontal bar chart, we should modify it to be vertical. And after we define our axis and our scales, we should return the new options. That, don't forget, is else as the actual options that we pass. So right now we just copy paste it and we put the horizontal. This is a pretty easy modify. We just modify the index axis because the scales should be the same logic. After that, we will define our stacked part. So for the stacked part, everything that we are gonna do is we will check if our stacks are on false, and we will put them on true. And it doesn't matter if we put them on the vertical or on the horizontal part. And the last one is going to be, of course, our custom. And for this, we'll have a little bit of different logic. So first of all, we should get rid of these scales. And second of all, we should use right now our action, and we will say that we are going to return a new object that is going to compute based on our modified options. So this syntax said that every property from our new options will be modified with the properties of our action modified options, and every property that is added is going to be also added in our new option. So this part is going to be by, first of all, making our mistake not a mistake anymore. So the last case is going to be stacked, and the deep clone shouldn't have a type because we should modify the options with any other type, for example dogna chart or something like this. And this part is going to make the options provider. So we define export const options provider, and it's going to be our type that we defined in the previous part, that is aux props. And these aux props will have the children. The children, don't forget, are simply JSX elements, and we will create our use reducer. But for this, let's first of all define our options provider. Should have something like this: options prov and dispatch options provider. And for this, we must first of all give them a type. And what type is our options provider has? Well, it's going to be chart options key of I think it's chart type registry. Yeah, that's the type from the Chartjs. And our dispatch, that is going to be any. And after that, we must put them in a use reducer hook. And how do we do it? We simply put use reducer, and we will put the options provider, the options reducer that we first of all created, and our initial options to be the first interaction with our use reducer, and of course import it. And what should we return? Well, we will return our options context first of all, and this is not actually what we are going to return. It's going to be our options context provider, and this is going to have an initial value for the options provider, options prov. And what is wrong here? It's with the non-capital O. Better copy paste it. Okay. And second of all, we are going to have our options dispatch context provider, of course. And if we click it, or better, first of all, define the value. The value is going to be our dispatch options prov, and in between we will define our children. And what is wrong here? Of course, we actually forgot to make these options context. So we first of all need to create context for our options context. That is going to be chart options, key of chart type registry. This name is so long, I always forget it. Okay, and this is going to be our initial options. What is wrong here? I think that I forgot something. Okay, let's see. So what do I forgot here? The context was not provided. Oh, I forgot, I think, to import it, or no. So what's the problem? Oh, no, I forgot to import it, sorry. So our create context is now created, and the second of all, we should create our option dispatch context. That is going to be the create context of dispatch any, and is going, of course, sorry, not only any, also undefined, and is going to be first of all undefined. And our options context, we should make this our options context provider to make our application work. Now we should move on to do the exact same thing with the data. First of all, we will define our enum for the labels. The labels are going to be the months, so export enum month. That is going to contain all the months of the calendar year, so January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. So right now we should define our data action interface, as well as we do with our option interface. So for this we're going to have something similar. So for the type, I want to add a data set, I want to remove a data set, and right now it's going to be something interesting. I want to add the month and also remove the month. And of course we should have our custom, because something that somebody should modify the entire data if you want by modifying data. That is going to be our second parameter, and is going to be chart data key of our one and only chart type registry. Okay, now that we have the types, we can go and define our labels. That is going to be, let's begin with just the first month of the year after we fix our enum, and is going to be months, not month. So our label will contain, first of all, for our initial options, is going to be the chart data of key of chart type registry as before. And of course you can go and check the official website in order to see how these chart data actually looks. So we will have the labels, and of course let's fix our const. So the labels is going to be the first year of the month. After that we will define our data set that is going to be an array. So the first label is going to be dataset1. That is going to be the name of our actual dataset, and it will contain a data that is going to be the actual labels that we defined, and we will put some value that is going to be, for example, mathfloor random times 100. This will give a number that is going to be between 1 and 100. And what we will do with this map actually is to map a number to our month, our current month. and let's define an RGB color. Let's say RGB 25599.130 with an opacity of 0.5, and we should copy it in order to have, for example, 2 datasets at the beginning. And let's see a number here, but before that we should modify our label in the dataset 2, and let's modify the background color to be 54162 and 235 with the same opacity. What is wrong here? Redeclare block scope. Oh, I think I understand. We actually modified our initial options and we should make the initial data. After that, I will create the data context. It's going to be pretty similar with our context of the options. So it's going to be create context of chart data key of chart type registry, our favorite word in this project, and is going to be our initial data. And of course, let's create our data dispatch context. And this data dispatch context is going to be the create context of our dispatch of any or undefined, because we couldn't have it at the beginning. And after that, we should put it undefined because we don't know which dispatch function will be first of all used. And right now, let's create our data reducer. So since it's also pretty similar with the option reducer, we'll have first of all our data that is going to be chart data key of chart type registry. And after that, we are going to have an action function that is going to be this data action that we defined previously with all its types, a dataset, remove dataset, add month, and the others. And what does our function return? It will return also similar to the option reducer, the chart data key of chart type registry. And we will begin the switch based on our action type. And what is going to be the first case? Well, the first case is going to be the add dataset. And we first of all will do something similar that we done before. We'll clone deep in order to not access the initial data, but we will use an actual clone of it. And after that, I will create a new dataset that we want to pass. And let's define our label. Our label should be something similar with the datasets that we used before. So if we use dataset 1 and 2, this label will actually use the name dataset, and we will put simply the new dataset's length plus 1. So the next one is going to be 3, 4, and so on. For our data, we must first of all check if our new data and the new data labels exist, and if they do, we use here the ternary operator for the simplicity. Our new data labels we are going to map to put it in an also random value between 1 and 100. So I will simply copy paste it, and it's going to be the same math floor math random times 100. And I think I forget one parenthesis here. Yes. And our background color, we should also generate something random here because it's not user based. So we are gonna put something like, let's say, something similar actually to what we map here. So we have math floor math random times 100, and I think it's good. No, sorry, not times 100, times 255, and I think it's pretty good to put it for every value in the RGB. And the last one is going to have also 0.5, that it's the opacity. Okay, so now we have our new dataset. What should we do? We should add it by putting the new dataset and the datasets of the new dataset that is going to be the previous datasets and the actual new one created. So we simply add it to him. Okay, now let's move on to the second case, that is going to be the remove dataset. So for the remove dataset, we begin by doing something similar. We clone deep our data, and right now I think I want to do something a little bit different. We don't want to make our chart to be completely empty, but we should also have something like, if our chart has less than 2, so it will have just one dataset, we shouldn't remove it. And for this, I want to always remove our last one, so it's going to be new dataset slice, new data of datasets dot slice 0 minus 1, and this will actually remove the last one always. And let's add the months. So we should add month case, and for this I want to do something similar. So I will create a new data and clone deep our data. After all, we create our current month because, as I said, we don't want to remove the months if we are in January, and we don't want to add month if we are in December. So I must check if the new data and new data labels exist first of all. If they do, our new data labels should have the new data labels dot length, I think, -1. Yes, to be our actual current month. And if it doesn't have a length, well, that means that we are in January. And let's check if our current month is less than, it's different than December. Well, that means that we could add the month. So the next month, we're going to make something like object keys of our months that is going to traverse every element of our enum, and we are gonna say object keys of object keys months index of our current month +1. So with this we can actually see what our next month will look like, and after that we could create our new data. So const new, new data set, and it's going to be our new data.dataset, where we map every data set to be something like, let's say, our current data set that we have, but for the data where we store our values, we'll say something like the old data set data, and we will add something new in order to add the month. So we will do what we always does for the month, and we will say something like math floor of math random times 100. So right now we have our new data set, and we could return our new data. And after that, for the labels, first of all, let's return the old labels. Since the old labels doesn't have a type, we should put it as unknown, and we will concatenate to the old labels our next month. So these are going to be our new labels, and for the dataset we should do something pretty similar. So it's going to be the new dataset. So we will put to actual the next month our new dataset that is created. And that was it with the add month. Now let's go to the remove month. First of all, we will deep clone our data as we do in any other case. So we'll write something like const new data equals deep clone of our data. As I said, as we do in any other case. After that, we must actually check if the labels exists. So what could we write here? We could write something like if new data.labels and new data.labels.length are bigger than 1, because we want to see either if the labels exist or if the length of the labels is bigger than 1. And after that, we could define our new data set. How could this be? So we'll have something pretty similar with the add month, but we'll just remove it actually. So we'll write something like new data.datasets.map, where we have access to every dataset. And what do we want to return? We want to return the dataset, the previous one, but the data should be dataset.data.slice 0 minus 1 in order for it to actually remove only the last data from our dataset. And what do we return after all in our case of remove month? So we will return the new data that is going to be the data that we cloned, and the labels are going also to be modified. So if we have data and data labels, they are going to be the new data.labels.slice 0 minus 1, because we modified the data and the labels. And our dataset is going to be the new dataset. And let's move on to the last case. So what is going to be? Our last case is going to be the custom. What are we going to do here? We are going to create the new data that is going to be the deep clone of the data, and as we did before, we will return our new data. And right now we could actually use our modified action. So we will put something like new data and action modify data, and that was all. Okay, in this part we are going to create our data provider. So let's define it. Export cons data provider. It's going to be React FC of AUX props, because as is something the same with the option provider, so it will have the children of the JSX elements. After that, we must define our reducer functions. So it's going to be data prov and dispatch data prov. And what type does it have? Well, first of all, it will going to have the type of the data prov that is going to be chart data of our key of chart type registry, of course, as always, our chart type registry. And the next one is going to be dispatch of any, and we will use, as before, the reducer. So we are going to write something like use reducer of the data reducer and our initial data. Okay, and what should we return with this? We should return the two contexts. So first of all, we will have the data context.provider, and what value should it have? Well, it should have the value of the data prov. And we should do something pretty similar with our data dispatch context dot provider. We should also enclose it, but before, let's put the value of the data dispatch prov. And right now we could actually close it. And of course, our children. What is wrong here? Oh, I mistyped it. And that was all about the data provider. But before we end this part, I want to make sure that our context can be used with an actual function, and we should first of all use context for our use data, and it's going to return use context of course, data context. And why is it red? It's red because I haven't imported, I think. Let's check it. Yeah, of course, because I haven't imported, and I don't know why my VS Code doesn't auto import it. But let's move on. The next function is going to be our use data dispatcher. So our useDataDispatch function is going to return, of course, the use context of our data dispatch context. And I think that's it. Or have I forgot something? Yes, I have forgot something. I will also do the same for our option, because I haven't done it in the option part. So I will export the function useOption, and I will use the use context of the data option, but it's not data option, it's option context, and our export function for the use option dispatch. And what should we return? Of course, we should return use context of our option dispatcher context. And that was all with this part. Okay, right now let's move on to the chart wrapper. But first of all, let's create the chart folder, and inside that we will create our TSX component named ChartWrapper. First of all, let's export the enum chart type, because we want to have something like 4 charts. The first one is going to be bar, and we write something like bar equals bar a string. After that we will have line chart, so line, pie chart, that is going to be the pie, and the last one is going to be dogna chart. So we'll display on our screen 4 types of charts. And after that we could define the type that we are gonna inherit our component. So we have an interface named chart type, and it's going to have a type property that is going to be of the chart type enum. And now that we have our properties, we can go further and begin to write the code for our component. And let's say that our component should be named ChartWrapper, as the folder said, and it will going to have the React FC type of chart type. And we will have some props here, so the props are going to be the actual type that is going to be passed. So the type that is going to be, of course, of chart type, and inside our chart wrapper we will have the options that is going to use our context, so use option, and our data that is, of course, use our data for the context, actually the context for the data. And after that we are gonna have the function that will define what type of chart do we want to display. Its name is going to be getChartComponent, and we'll receive a type that is going to be, of course, of chart type enum. And in order to decide which type of visualization to have, let's switch to the type. So if the case is chart type enum.bar, we want to create a bar chart, so we must return the bar component. The bar component is going to be imported from the React Chartjs 2, and that component will receive an options that is going to be our option, and we must precise the type, so it's going to be options as chart options bar. And we want to define also how big our component should be. So in order to do this, we can specify its width that is going to be 700 pixels, and its height that is going to be also 700 pixels. And for this we must also pass the data that it's going to be data as of course chart data, and chart data with the bar inside, because as I said, we want to pass the bar. And don't forget to import the chart data. So we have the first type. We must do something pretty similar in other cases. So the case 2 is going to be chart type enum.line in order to create our line visualization, and we must return this time not the bar, but we will return the line. The line has still the same options, so it's going to be option as chart options, this time line. The width and the height, I think that is going to be the same. So let's say width that is going to be 700 pixels. And I think I have a problem. Oh, yes, because I imported it from the wrong library. But right now we have the width of 700 and the height also of 700 pixels. And in the end, we will put the data as chart data with the string line in it. Okay. Now we can import it from React Chartjs too. And of course, we can move forward with our next case. So our next case is going to be the chart type enum.py. And after we declare our case, we must return also from the React chart2.js the py component. And the py component will have only the width, the height, and the data, because it doesn't have any options, or at least it doesn't specify in the official documentation, and we must import it. And our last case is going to be the donut chart. So the case is going to be chart type.donut, and after we define our case, we will have something pretty similar with the pie chart, but we will import the donut component. So right now we can specify the width, the height, and the data is going to be the donut. And that was all, I think, about the getChart component function. So what should we do now? Maybe let's define our Chartjs register, because as I said, if you go to the official documentation, you will see that the Chartjs must register some components in order for the React Chartjs to function. So we must import Chartjs as we must import chart as Chartjs, and we will define some components that are going to be used in order to the Chartjs register to function. But let's finish it. We will import it from Chartjs, and right now we can register it, and we will register the items. First one is going to be the category scale. The next one is going to be the line scale. The next one is going to be the bar element. We will go with the title, with the tooltip. We can continue right now with the legend and with the point element. And after we move forward, we can continue with the line element and with the filler, the arc element that is going to help us with the line chart, and we can copy these and import them for the chart from Chartjs. And right now our function should work, and we shouldn't forget to return them. We will return just the div, and inside the div we must return our getChart component function after we make another div right in. We will return the Chartjs component function where we pass the type that we receive from the props. Okay, right now we should move into the app.tsx component in order for us to define our routes. But do not forget to export the default chart type wrapper, as I forget about it. And right now we must first of all make sure that we provide the options and the data. So for this we will use the data provider that is going to be on the most top level, and by that I mean on the app.tsx, and the options provider, and everything must be in between them as JSX components. Because don't forget, the options provider and the data provider uses the children JSX components. And right now let's define our routes from React Router DOM. Let's move on. first route it's going to be, as our main navigation said, it's going to be the bar element. But we want to make sure that if we first of all enter the applications, it will be deflected when we have nothing in the route to the bar chart. So for this, we must write something like path element should be navigate replaced with bar chart. And after that, our second element is going to be slash bar chart. And the element that you want to display, actually all the elements will be the chart wrapper, but they will have a different kind of type. So the first one is going to have the type from the enum, that means chart types enum.bar. But first of all, let's import it. So after we import it, we can use the chart type element.bar. Okay, so right now if we will click on the bar chart, everything will appear. And let's copy paste it 4 times. The second one is going to be named line chart, as our main navigation said. And of course, let's put the line. The same will be to the next one, is going to be our pie chart. And we will put the chart type enum pie and the pie chart as path. And the last one is going to be the donut chart. And don't forget to move the type and put it to the donut chart. And right now, let's see how our application looks like. So if we take a look at it, we can see that every chart is going to be displayed. And it looks pretty cool. So this was all for this part. Right now, we can move on to the UI components. So for this, I will create a folder named UI. And in that component, I want to begin by naming our first component a text area that is going to display our options and our data. And for this, I will create an interface that is going to be named text area props. And our text area will have a disable option that is going to be Boolean. And of course, we must define our component. So React FC, that is going to have the text area props that we previously defined. And of course, as the props is going to be disable options. And I just copy paste it right now. Okay. And right now we can create our options, and is going to be the JSON stringify version of our context. So for this, we will use option, and I want to look exactly like an object. So for this, I will use JSON stringify with null and to, and of course the same thing with the data. This should be only for the display part, and if you want to modify something on the way with these text areas. And we are going to have our options dispatch that is going to be use option dispatch, and the same thing as our data dispatch. So data dispatch is going to be use data dispatch. Okay, right now we have full control over our options and our data. And we can begin by writing our first function that is going to be handle option change. This will have a React change event as a type that is going to contain an HTML text area element. And let's begin defining our function. We first of all want to check if we have an option dispatch, and if we do, we can call it by writing option dispatch type that is going to be custom, because our data and our option should be modified with what we are writing in that specific text area, and our modified option is going to be the JSON parse of eTarget value. eTarget value means what we actually write in that text area, and we should copy it and paste it and do the same for our data dispatch. But I copy paste the wrong thing. So instead of option, we're gonna change it with data, and right now we'll have the data dispatch. And everything seems to work. Right now, let's see how our function should, how our JSX should look. So we first of all create a div, and inside the div, I want to say that if the disable options is true, I want to create my first element that is going to be the text area, and the text area have some elements in it. First one is the placeholder, that is going to be option. If all the fields are missing, then the values should be our option, and on change, of course, we should trigger the handle option changed. And with this, we have our first text area ready. Now we can actually create the second text area. So if we create it, second text area placeholder is going to be this time data. The value is going to be this time the data also, and on change we're gonna call the second handler. So on change is going to be handler data change. And with this we create our text area JSX component. And we must export it. So we write something like export default text area. In this part, I want to actually create the CSS for this text area. So for this, I will create the text area.module.csx, and we will begin with the elements. So first of all, we will define our text area class that is going to have a fixed width of 30 im, and after that a height of 26.5. After that, we should write something like background color black, because I want to make them look like the VS Code. The next one is going to be margin 5, margin left in order to put them in the right side of our visualization is going to be 15 pixels, and the padding of 10, and the border none. And the next one, but let's say first of all that I don't want to resize it. And the next one, it's going to be our .vs. I said .vs class because I want to have the same color as the ones are the VS Code using, or something at least similar. So right now we can create our class name and say something like classes.textArea, but before that I actually should import it, but I will import it afterwards. So classes.textArea and also the classes.vs for the text. And we should do the same with the other text area. And right now all we have to do is to import the classes from the actual text area module.csx. And with this we have styled. The next component that we are going to use is going to be the buttons. But the buttons should begin with the buttons module.csx, because we want to define our class based on what the button actually do. So first of all, let's define the action button that is going to be actually all the buttons. We have a font size of 16 pixels, a padding of 8 pixels and 60 pixels. The border radius would be something like 4 pixels. After that we have the border none. The cursor, because we want to click it, so we'll have pointer, and the margin right is going to be the 10 pixels because they want to be one next to each other. And we'll have the first class that is going to be the add dataset. With this we'll add the actual dataset, of course, and we'll have a color of green. So they will be color green with what we want to add, and the color will be white. This is for the actual text that is going to be displayed inside our buttons. Okay, we will copy paste it, and we say something like remove dataset, where we only change the color, so the color will be red. After that we will gonna have the add month, I think, add month, yes, and we will define the color to be something like let's say blue. And the remove month, let's make it pretty similar with the remove dataset. I could also use just the remove dataset, but let's make a little bit of separation of concern. So the color here will be white, and we should be good with this kind of thing. And the action button dot disabled, because sometimes we don't want to use our buttons, so it is cursor not allowed. And the opacity, we should shrink it, it's going to be 0.5. Okay, now that we have our button module.csx, we can move on and create our component, so it's going to be button.tsx. And after we create it, we should import classes. Right now I don't forget to use it, so import classes from button module.csx, and we can begin by writing first of all our interface for our button. Actually, let's define it the same way for as the text area, so button props, and we will say what type of button it is, and with that type we will create the actual we will apply actually the CSS class. After that we will have the text, the disable, and the onClick property, and we can begin by writing const button is going to be react fc button props, and right now we can define our props. Let's say props is going to be button props because there are too many and I'm too tired to write them all. And let's define our class name, that is going to be by default classes.actionButton, and as I said, we can switch it to apply a different CSS dynamically. So we want to switch the props.type, and in the case we will have something like add dataset, then our class name will have a different value. That's why I use let. I don't encourage you to actually have variables that are not immutable, but right now I think it's okay. So we'll have the class name that was before, and classes dot add dataset from our CSS module, and break, of course. After that we want to make the other cases, so our next case, let's copy paste it 3 more times. We will have the remove dataset, and from our classes we will apply the remove dataset. After that we will have the remove months, or month, not months, and we'll apply also classes.remove month. After that we'll have the add month, I think, yes, and the classes will be classes.addMonth, and we should format it a little bit to look nice, and the default will be classes, it will be equal with classes add month, but we will never go on the default, but it's okay to write sometimes these defaults. And let's put it better for the add dataset, okay? And we should return our button component, so it's going to be a button. The class name, it's going to be simply our class name that we created before, and on click we should have something that is going to be directly passed from our props, so it's going to be props on click, and the disabled is going to be props.disabled, that is also going to be passed. And between the buttons we're going to have props.text in order to see what should be written inside that button. The next element that we want to design, it's going to be our dropdown. So we'll have a dropdown.tsx, and in this dropdown we will create the actual vertical, stacked, or horizontal in order for the visualizations to be changed. So let's define our dropdown, and we want to see what active option it is. So for this I want to create the const active option and set active options to be equal with useState. That is going to be first of all our vertical state, and we should import useState from it. And after that we can create our options dispatcher that is going to use the actual options dispatcher. And why do I want to use this? Because I actually want to modify our data dynamically and handle option changed that will use our option dispatchers, because as you know the vertical, the horizontal, and the stacked are only linked to the options, so we don't need to use the data. And we will have an event that is going to have a target value of the type react set state action, and it's going to be also string besides it. And what will we have from it? Well, we will have something like this. So we must first of all set active options, and we want to see what our event target value is, because as we click on the drop down, it should change the actual event target value. And after we switch it, we can see, for example, if our case is vertical, let's begin with the vertical case. We want to check that if we have the option dispatch, then we can actually call it. So we will call option dispatch that is going to have the type of vertical and the value, oh no, only the type of vertical, sorry. And after that, we must copy paste the other cases. So the next one is going to be horizontal, and our type is going to be option dispatch of type horizontal. And the last one, it's going to be the last one is going to be the stacked, but don't forget to use the breaks. And our next case is going to be the stacked one. Let's better copy paste it. But first of all, what problem does I have here? Oh, so we must use actually all the states, or the cases are not yet matched. So we want to check if option dispatch, then we should call option dispatch with the type of stacked, I think. Yes, this is our last one. And of course break, and everything should be right now okay, I think. Yes. Why do I still have this? Okay, this closes here, and no, I think it was okay, or so this closes here, and yes, we must have another parenthesis. Okay, so right now our handler option change is correct, and we must return our div that is going to contain the actual dropdown in it, and we must have a select HTML element with the value of our action option, and on change it should trigger our created handling option changed. Okay, I think it's okay right now. And of course we should have the options between them. So we can create an HTML option with the value of vertical, the first one, and let's say between them that is vertical. After that we will create the option for the horizontal, so we will define another option with the value of horizontal, and let's put horizontal between them. And the last one, it's going to be our option with the value of stacked, and after we put it, the value stacked, we can write also stacked between them. And I think that this was all with it. And let's also display better our active options. That is going to be our active options from the use state. Yes, and after we write it, I think that we are okay with it. And we should also export default our dropdown. Okay, right now let's define our dropdown.module.csx because we want to style a little bit our CSX, and let's create our dropdown container class. It's going to have a padding of 20 pixels, and let's say our how do we call it, our dropdown select, and let's put it the width of 50%, the padding of 12 pixels and 20 pixels, and let's define a little bit of margin. So margin is going to be 8 pixels 0, and after that we will have the box sizing. This is going to be border box. Okay, right now let's define the actual border. It's going to be 2 pixels solid because it should look like a drop down, and the drop downs does have borders in general, and border radius of 4 pixels, and the background color should be something like, let's say, F8, F8, F8. This is a little bit white, and the font size should be, let's say, 16 pixels. And of course our transition, because we should have the transition, is going to be border 0.5, and let's say ease out. Okay, so now that we define our drop down select, we should define our drop down select when we hover over it. And what should we do? We should put the border 2 pixels solid 3D, 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 and let's say our drop down select, when we have this option in it, and option value actually equals with active option. So when something is active, we want to set the background color to be something like also 3D, and the color should be, let's say, FFF, and of course we want to put another color for our active. So if we have the active option, we want to make the font size more bigger, so 20 pixels, and we want to put the margin of let's say margin top 20 pixels, and the color should be blue because it should pop in the eyes. And after we save it, we can go back to our drop down component, and in the div, let's say class name. But first of all, because I always forget to import classes from our previously created drop-down module, so import classes from, let's copy paste it, because it was a little bit of mistake there. So dropdown.module.csx, and we can begin. The first class is going to be classes.dropdown, actually classes.dropdown container, and after that we can define for our select. Let's put the class name of classes dot dropdown, but not container, dropdown select, and after that we want to put where we actually have our active options, to put a class name of classes dot active option, and with this we styled a little bit our component. Okay, in this part we are gonna prepare our chart wrapper and import our UI. So first of all, we will go to the ChartWrapper module.csx, and we will define our text area container, and we will say something like grid column should be 2 of 3. And we will define another div where we will say classes dot our new text area container, and we will define our text area that is going to be our JSX component, and the disable option should be something like false, and only false. And yes, it also imports automatically, and I think that I have a mistake here. Yes, it's modified options, and the other one is actually modify handle data, so not modified options. And if we look it looks pretty good to me. We can modify this. For example, let's modify our label, let's say January 1 Y, and it actually modifies. And if you refresh it, we'll see every time another value is passed. Okay, now we will move on to the next part of our ChartWrapper module.csx. We will create our buttons, so we will create a button container. It's going to be the display flex, and we are gonna align the items in the center because we want to have them under our visualization, and the justify content also must be centered. Okay, right now let's create the actual handlers for our buttons. So the first one is going to be the data dispatch that we are gonna use, and we are simply gonna say use data dispatch after we create the const data dispatch. And let's begin declaring our handlers. So our first handler that we are gonna declare, it's going to be the function handler data change, but not this. It's going to be handler add dataset actually, and it's going to return void because we, as I said, do not modify the actual data. And if we will write something like if data dispatch, let's call our dispatch function and write the type that is going to be the add data set, sorry, and as far as you know, it is handled in the context. The next one is going to be the handle remove dataset, and it's pretty similar. We write the void that is of type void, and we will ask if data dispatch, then it's going to be the remove dataset. Okay, let's create the next two handlers because we have the handler for the addition of the month and the handler for the remove of the month. So the next one is going to be handle add month and the same code but with the type add month. And the next one is going to be the handle remove month. It's also of type void, and we will create the same thing but with type of remove month. Okay, right now we have all the handlers for it, and let's create our container. So class name is going to be for our new created div buttons container, and we will have the 4 buttons that are going to be in the JSX. And first button is going to have the type of the addition of the data set, and the text is going to be add dataset, of course. Don't forget the last element is going to be the onClick, and we will have the handle add dataset. And it was not the last element, sorry, it was the previously element, and this add dataset should be never disabled. And we have an error here because we didn't import it. Oh, actually we import it, but it imports from the MUI and not for our button. But why can't I find it? Okay. Oh, I can find it because I haven't exported. So export default our button, and if we go right now, we can import it. So we'll import from our UI button. Okay. And as far as you know, we'll have 4 buttons. The next one is going to be the remove dataset, and this will have the remove dataset as text and the handle of the remove dataset. And of course we can disable it. We can't disable it. No, we can't. The next one is the add month. With the text add month, we'll have the handle add month here, and after that we will have the disable to be, no, actually also for the remove dataset we want to make sure that it hasn't been removed if the dataset length is equal to 1, in order to always have something in our visualization. And for the add month, if our labels is equal to 1, we cannot remove it. I think I write something is equal to 12. I wrote 1. sorry. And the next one is going to be the remove month, and the remove month as a text, and we can write right now our remove month. And the disable is going to be data labels when the length is going to be 1, because we always want to have data, as I said. And right now, if we check it, we can see that we can't remove